Hello and welcome. My name is Lance Best in Auckland, New Zealand. This morning I'm with Dr. Pauline Crawford-Omps, Ambassador of Magical Conversations, international speaker, UK, Europe, Asia Pacific, India, US, a behaviourist and gender dynamics, expert, great British baby boomer, living in California, and a mother and grandmother, which cut out one of my questions because it's sort of, when do you get a life? But I now know you do have a life, because I talk to a lot of people, they don't seem to have a life, but you do. You're a mother and grandmother, and that's a major life. Doctor in what?
Well, interesting enough, a doctor in entrepreneurology, which is it's kind of like a higher level awareness of entrepreneurship. It's actually an international university of entrepreneurology that was set up by my husband's father some 46 years ago. And his vision was that people who are natural and achieving entrepreneurs to a higher level, our mission is to keep on going. So it's not about the money, it's about that. And ology is the science of. So I was very privileged to meet my husband's father before he passed on, and obviously this is my new husband, my American husband, and to understand the value of this doctorate based on the work that I've done in the field of wellness, which is the cultures of wellness in the business world. So it's a different kind of doctorate to a traditional Harvard doctorate, but it's very valid.
So you're UK, so whereabouts in the UK?
I was born in London, North London, suburb London, Finchley, and I lived there for my first 18 years, but my parents actually lived in the same place forever, so it was always my home. My parents have passed on now, but so London is my base. And to be honest, Lance, I never imagined that I would live in America, so life is always a magical mystery tour.
Well, how about this? I was talking to Dina yesterday. She was born in Islington. I was born in Islington, and not too far away from where you were.
Ah, yeah, I know Islington well. Some very good pubs there.
Yes, well, I only lasted there till 2, and then I was shunted off to boarding school in Brighton, so yeah.
Oh, well, I know Brighton well because my children live there.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's not so good as it used to be.
No, everywhere is changing. And I have been to your home city of Auckland a couple of times, and I love that as well. So the world is a fascinating place.
It is, wherever we are. With Henry, you talked about self-love, and you described some things. There's a couple of articles on my website. One is called "You Are Always Right," and the other is called "You Are Number One." You're always number one. And it was great to hear you talking, because you're talking about my intention of it. If I'm always right, then everyone else is always right. So then I can have a different conversation. Is that similar?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. And what's interesting is that the book that I've written, which is not actually published yet, but one of its sort of subtitles is "Who's in Charge?" And by that, I mean, actually, you're in charge, which is what you're saying. You know, if I'm right, then everybody else is right. But it's also about what people hear. So a lot of people will hear, if you started saying, "Well, I'm right," they might say, "Oh, does that mean I'm wrong?" And that's why we have to be so careful with words. But what I found fascinating was when I would say to people, "I'm writing a book called Who's in Charge," they would immediately say, "I must have a coffee." And I think, well, that's interesting. Are they saying that because they want to find out? And they're assuming that I'm going to write about telling them who's in charge, because sometimes people want to externalize their responsibility. And I would say, no, it's about you. It's about a journey about you. And that's what it's all about.
Yes.
It's a journey of you, of me, of Henry, of Jake, of everybody that we know. It's about our family, our employers, who we've experienced in our life. And I think the world is getting very challenging at the moment because people are going around saying, well, I'm right and you're wrong. So that's why I just say it is about I'm right about me, but we have to be careful about that statement.
Yes, absolutely. And I try and explain that, you know, that we're all right. So when we know we're all right, all of us, then we can actually talk about our right and their right. We don't have to conflict with it. So, yeah.
Well, that's right. And for me, it's all about sorting out anger and conflict. See, one of my rules of magical conversations is no anger. Now, I've actually been challenged by several of my interviews with men where they've said, yes, but we can't ignore anger. And I said, yeah, you're right. So anger can be a topic on the table, like conflict can be. But what I believe is that when we're around the table, we shouldn't act in an angry way. We might act in an impassioned way, or a sort of, you know, look, let's talk quite ferociously about it, but not actual physical anger, not like, you know, slamming the table or walking out, which is what a lot of people seem to do today, is that they go, well, I can't cope with this conversation, you must be wrong and I'm right, so I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get anywhere if you do that.
Well, anger is actually a positive energy, or can be. It's
Yeah.
like money, how you use it. When my dog goes near the edge of a cliff, that's my anger energy going, stop.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But it comes out in a behavior which it's not being aggressive to your dog. It's just being loud in order so that he startles and stops.
Yes.
But I think if anger gets into being vicious and destructive, that's when we have to be careful with it.
Yes.
So, as I say, having a conversation about anger or about conflict. I mean, there's a lot of interesting work on conflict as a force for good. By looking into conflict in a magical way, if you like, in a magical conversation, we can actually understand what is this dynamic going on where he says I'm right and he says I'm right. Because if they don't actually agree, then there may be a conflict. And of course, conflict ends up in war. Conflict zones are deemed to be not very nice places to be.
Nice.
But I want to be realistic about life. I think we have to be realistic about life and set loving intentions, even if it's about conflict.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, you're saying, I mean, I shouldn't be interviewing you. You're saying everything that I'm so in tune with. I wrote something down after you were talking, while you were talking about self-love, I wrote something down and I put, this is what I wrote. Oh, by the way, I understand anger is really, when you're angry, you're saying, what about me?
Yes.
I try to explain to people, when you realize what about me, when someone's angry, you can ask yourself what it is about them, because it's nothing to do with you.
Yes, absolutely.
So I wrote this down. Whatever problem we face, there is always a positive and a negative. So my thinking was, well, if you've got a problem, look for the positive. Okay, it's like yesterday I lost my interview and I was fuming and I said, well, we'll resolve it. So we're going to do the same thing again. So the interview all over again. But there's always a positive and negative in any situation. And it's a matter of finding the negative. Huh?
It is. And I don't know whether you follow Jay Shetty. He's talking quite a lot of good sense at the moment. But I read something about, he said, it's not about when something goes wrong, it's not about what it's doing to us. It's about what is it teaching me to do. So when yesterday your interview went wrong, it's okay to be annoyed or, you know, stamp your feet a bit in the moment, but then you let it go. And you go, okay, that if there's a reason for this happening, that's my belief, that everything happens for a reason, then I probably wasn't meant to do it. It was like Henry and I trying to do a Facebook Live today, and we just could not get it working, so we went and did it on Zoom. That's about being flexible with the tools that you've got at the moment. Yeah. And that's the same with human relationships, although sometimes it's difficult to walk away and then come back, but it's always possible.
Yes. Well, you sort of answered the next one during the interview with Henry, but because my question was, when do you relax and what is driving you?
That's a very, very good question, Lance. Having studied myself and also behavioral types, it's like I recognize with myself is that I find it quite difficult to relax because I'm driven by doing. And this is part of my kind of, if you like, my masculine energy, even though I'm a female. I've got to be doing something, got to be doing something. If I don't do something, then am I wasting time? And if I waste time, will I not get to where? So I've actually taught myself to relax. And literally, I have never been into meditation until the last few years of my life. When I try and do that. I was doing Qigong classes. I don't know whether you know what Qigong is. Yeah, and I don't have a class to go to here, but I really need to do the practice myself. But doing something that forces me to slow down, to breathe. And what's really interesting is that the last month, I discovered that I had a thyroid problem come up, which I've had for many years, but it actually stopped me quite a few days when I literally had to stop. Mm-hmm. And I believe now that when those things happen, it's the universe saying, hang on, you haven't been watching, you haven't been looking after yourself. And that's why life is a journey, you know, and it's also a game. I believe it's lessons in hand. So I like to dance, I like to meditate. I've got swimming pools around me and I don't go swimming enough. There are things that I need to do. But really, I love to relax. In the evening, my husband and I like to sit and watch a movie. I don't watch fearsome movies. I like to watch fun movies or romantic movies or something that stimulates your mind. And I find that quite relaxing. And my husband plays music, so if he's on the keyboard, that's relaxing. But I've got a very sort of high energy nature. So I just keep going. And why do I keep going? Because I'm very passionate about life being happier and more positive for everybody in the world. And specifically about men and women, was it something I've studied, and it's personal to me. I designed the blueprint because as a masculine-minded woman, a tomboy, I could never, as a teenager, I could never quite get to grips with who I was as a female, a soft and fluffy female. And even now, it's like I enjoy my masculine energy. I enjoy being a female as well. And that's been my journey, is to really understand that all women are females and we all have a core which is very nurturing and loving and relationship focused, but that we are different energies between us. There are some women who are much more feminine female and some that are masculine female, likewise with men. So, you know, the interviews I'm doing with men at the moment are fascinating because they are different types of men. And once we understand this, then we can get around the table and have magical conversations. So I dream of a world where there's harmony more often all the time than conflict. And that's what drives me. Because of what I've learned about myself, I'd like my sisters to understand each other. And there's a journey still there. And I'd like men and women to understand each other.
Yeah, I'm very much in alignment with that. My drive, I guess, is I don't want children to have to go through what I had to go through growing up. I just want to see every child get the opportunity to be who they are and foster their talents.
Well, that is a very interesting point, and I'm glad you said that, because part of my study in entrepreneurship and people is that, without getting too much into this, but we have stifled the creativity of our kids through traditional education. And so that's something my husband and I are very passionate about, that we need to release the creativity. And we're not the first people to talk about it. This has been talked about for centuries, and where we still don't do it. I mean, education is one of the greatest mysteries, really, because it hasn't changed in 200 years. And yet everything else has changed. Yes, we've got education online and we've got different types of schools, but the majority of the world is still going through this quite restrictive channel. And if you also don't come from a loving family that encourages your creativity, then we cease to have that ability to be magnanimous with the world. I was very lucky because I was born into a fabulously loving, happy family in North London. And there were four of us, my brother, elder brother, sister, me and my brother. And we did lots of things together. You know, we went on holidays together. We sat around the table together, went to church together, you know. And that was my grounding. That was my amazing situation when I was a kid, that I would like the whole world to experience. And it gives me great sadness when I meet people who have had, dare I say, a tortured childhood, from anything from, you know, literal damage to just some place where it was destroyed by a lack of understanding. And like you said, that is not what we want for our children and our grandchildren.
Absolutely not. I tell you, by the way, you asked about Qigong. You're looking at someone who's not only read hundreds of books on personal growth, but also he's tested out just about every therapy you can think of.
Well done, you. That is fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I realized at some stage I had to understand. My quest was, who am I?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is the quest. And what's interesting is that I believe we are well on that pathway for a good percentage of the world, but it's not always the percentage of the world that gets written about in the press or seen on social media. I mean, it's almost a battle there to find, yeah, there are lots of good stories, but there are lots of bad stories as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, that doesn't help. I know we have to be realistic, but also sometimes people are drowning in sad stories.
Yeah, I don't think the media know what, don't understand responsibility in association with freedom of press. And I have a major issue with that personally, but there you go.
Yeah.
Can you explain this? Let me just, we are equal and unique as human beings. Our differences keep us alive, and our similarities create the dynamic that bonds us one to another. Can you explain that to me?
Well, yes, for me, and I follow the Dalai Lama for sure. You know, he talks about we are, you know, what is it? Is it 7? Oh, you met him. Fantastic. I did meet him, but in a crowd. I didn't meet him personally.
I shook his hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
He says, you know, we're one of 7, was it 7, just over 7 billion people in the world. So in that respect, I believe we're all equal in terms of we're on this planet. But the differences, and these could be not just gender differences, but the fact that you're, you know, I'm from Great Britain, I'm now living in America, you're from Great Britain, now you live in New Zealand, we're baby boomers. You know, I've got silver hair now, so have you. You know, I'm 5'4", I'm not 6'4". I mean, there's loads and loads of differences. Some people are slim, some people are broad-boned. You know, some people are born with a natural ability to play music or to draw a circle or to be a mechanic. You know, there are things that we are born with. And our DNA is all different. Our fingerprints are all different. So as well as being all human beings and all breathing the same air and having the same potential, we're all beautifully different. And it's understanding those differences that makes us unique and exciting to know. But our similarities do help to bond. So, you know, I don't know about you, but I love all generations, but sometimes I just like to be with people my age. You know, sometimes it's nice to be in a community where everybody was dancing to the Beatles in 1964.
Them too. I had breakfast with them.
Well, there you go, you see, because our experiences are similar. So I always think that, you know, people do marry with large age gaps, but if you go outside of 10 years, you're challenged by a different set of experiences.
Yeah.
So we each have a unique path, but we have similarities that happen. And when we find somebody, we find a connection, even if it's like we both hate carrots or we both love the Rolling Stones, you know, I mean, it could be anything as magnificent and as little as possible. But when we find connections, that's our similarities. And that's it's sort of like a comfort zone of we share something, because sharing is like that. But the differences are what make us kind of bubble up, you know, that we get to know how those differences fit together. That for me is the excitement of life. And if you don't have conversations or you're not interested in people, then you're never going to find that.
Mm.
And I used to say to people, you need to be interested in people, but you also need to be interesting. She'll get, some people are very clever at asking questions, but they don't give anything away.
Yeah.
And you can't find a connection. And there's always a connection. I used to do classes on this, and very simple ones, like, so pick a topic like holidays, something straightforward. So you say to somebody, it's like, so, if it's summertime, have you been on holiday? And they might say, yes, I've been to the Mediterranean. And you might say, gosh, I've been to the Mediterranean. Where was that? And you end up finding you went to the same place. Or maybe you didn't. And you say, gosh, that's really interesting because I've been to parts of the world, but I've never been to the Mediterranean. Tell me about it. And you can do those very simple exercises to get people practice, to find a way into a conversation. Because people become nervous about being in the unknown.
You've explained what I heard you say very well. That was good. It reminds me of for speakers who some speakers don't seem to realize this. Whenever I ask a question like, have you been to France? I always ask, and who hasn't been to France? Because I want to include everybody. And then I know one or two people don't bother to put their hands up. So I say, well, for those of you that haven't been to France or have been to France, then we can have that conversation another day, because I want to get everybody in to because, I've said this to others before, when people do lives, and you go, oh, hello, John, hello, Mary, you're ignoring the rest of your audience. And I wish people would stop that and just go, hey, it's wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us today, all those that have joined us. Because the minute you miss someone out, that's your audience you've neglected. And it's so easy to happen because it shows me you're more interested in you than you are in your audience. Absolutely.
This is why I love talking about gender dynamics, because inevitably the audience is either male or female or either or. And also, I ask a very simple question. I usually ask the audience, are men and women the same? And they always say no. And I ask, are all men the same? They always say no. And I thought, are women the same? And they always say no. So I've already got 3 nodding dog agreements, and then I'm away.
Well, actually, physically, certainly the brain, there's only one minute difference between men and women. Otherwise, they're basically the same. So it's very, and it's one part of the brain that's slightly larger in men or something than it is in women or something. And that's it. So when you take
in terms of the brain, that's true. But in terms of other features on the body, there are quite a few differences, Lance.
Absolutely.
Different bits and pieces, so to speak. Yes.
Here's me jumping again now. Tell me about Pauline when she was a child between 1 and 6, a time when she was in her prime.
Well, when I was born, and this is kind of a hearsay story, but it was impacted on me because my mother said she had dreamed the whole of the pregnancy that I was a boy, and had a fight with the doctor when he delivered me, and he said it's a girl, and she was so shocked. She said, "Oh no, I thought it's a boy." She said, "No, it's a girl," and she was going to call me Paul. So, and my first 6 years were interrupted age 4 because my brother arrived. So I had an elder brother and sister, and I was the little baby, the one of 3, and very happy, loving Catholic family in North London. My mum was a stay-at-home mum. My dad went to work, but they were very loving, and so it was always fun. And I was a bit of a joker. I used to kind of play the fool. There's this lovely picture of me eating the dog biscuit, and I kind of had curly hair, and I was really quite cute. But then my younger brother arrived. What?
You still are.
Thank you. My younger brother arrived, and he was the baby boy that my mum was looking for when I arrived. That's my story. But I think then I had to kind of grow up. But around the age of 6, so my brother would only been 2. But I like to play out in the garden. I like to ride my tricycle. I was always a bit of a tomboy. I just like to play out, and I like art, and so I would draw a lot. And then as I got beyond that, I got into dressmaking and then sort of artistic things. but I'm actually a mathematician and artist. So it's my role model in life is Leonardo da Vinci. But yeah, my first 6 years were always as part of a family. And that's the most important thing, is that, you know, my sister and I went to school together. We went to the same school. It was a girls' school. We were always together as a family. Lots of external, you know, other, not external, but bigger family, aunts, uncles, cousins, big tea parties. My father was Maltese, and so there were lots of tea parties of the Maltese family coming over, and then my mum's family was quite big as well. And we'd have loads and loads of, yeah, as I say, tea parties. We were expected to play up as well. So we had to do a poem or a song or something in front of the family. So you were always expected to act as well. So a greatly enthusiastic and creative family life.
Have you been to Malta?
I have been a few times. I first went when I was 18 or 19, I think. But we have a big family there in Malta. My younger brother is the archivist, and he collected all the names. So if I ever went again now, I would probably know the whole island. But I'm very proud of my Maltese upbringing and my heritage. It was a very entrepreneurial heritage as well. They were great business people, the family.
Have you been to Camino and Ozo?
Yeah, I've been everywhere. I mean, it's not very big, so it's not that difficult to go everywhere, is it?
I had at least two holidays in Ozo, and I've been skiing in Camino, and I've been to the casino. Not that I usually visit, not that I like gamble, but there's a beautiful casino in Malta as well.
Oh, well, I haven't been there, so you've done something I haven't done. But I went to sort of meet family and do a lot of swimming and visiting.
And you've been to that old town, one end of Malta, where it's like down below, but it's still
Valletta.
Yeah. Is it not?
Valletta's the capital.
No, not Valletta. Valletta's the capital where the casino is. But you go to towards Ozo.
Oh yes, Medina.
And there's this beautiful. It's like stepping back into the 16th century.
There's a walled city there.
Yes.
And in fact, one of my relatives was Lady Pulicino, who lived in the castle there in Medina.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it was really good. So yes, my childhood was very fortunate and very fun.
Okay, so jumping about again, relationships are the essential connective tissue of our existence.
Absolutely. I think for me, friendship is key to my life. At school, I always enjoyed lots of good friendships. I loved connecting with everybody. I was a connection as well within that. And connection creates relationships. But it's also understanding the difference between kind of core relationships and then the next layer out and the next layer out. So I often talk about the different levels of soulmate love, that you can have soulmate love in your family life and in your social tribe and in your professional life, as well as with one individual. Mm-hmm. And that is about friendship, relationships of all levels. I love connecting with people, and, sometimes I feel like I maybe over-connect, but I just love the idea of building relationships and also helping other people too. And not trying to force my values on other people, but I think friendship is core to our health as well. And I think for men, it's important for men to have friendships with men and women to have friendships with women, as well as intimate friendships if they're heterosexual. And I know that there's quite a lot of research that says that, friendships can heal people.
Oh, yeah. Because
somebody gets cancer or somebody gets an illness and they hide away. It's not necessarily the best thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. Why I deal with communication, because everything about you is communication. Everything. You can't not communicate with me. I know a few people on Facebook. I've never met them.
Yeah.
But I know a lot. But they don't seem to realize that you can tell everything about people through their communication.
Absolutely. And that's why I think it's very important to be careful about how you create relationships through social media. And you don't get you don't polarize your existence by being too opinionated, but by having some views, which is important so people get to know you.
Yeah, I'm a bit naughty at times, but I have to be very careful. People don't get my intention. My intention is always, for some reason, I always look for things improving, being better.
Yes,
so nothing
and that's good.
To do with the person. It's to do with, oh, we made that statement. Let me ask a question about it. But people can take it personally. So I sort of, oh no, I didn't really mean to do that. And it goes down a path I never chose. So yeah, I have to be very wary of what's going on. And nowadays I tend to say, look, I better pull out of this conversation because I can cut things with a knife with my voice. I mean,
well, again, that's an important part of your awareness. So I think there was a very good piece of advice from one of my interviews with my brain stops working at this time of my life, but there was somebody who said that if he felt, and it was a man, if he felt that he had upset somebody or he'd said something out of order, then he got into the habit of going back to them and saying, I'm not sure, I just want to check whether what I said offended you or not. And if the person says, oh no it didn't, then it's fine. But it said it covers the odds. So it's not all the time, but when you sense that maybe you stepped over the line and you knew that by somebody just going,
oh, that's excellent. Yeah.
So, you've got nothing to lose because the person can say, oh, no, it was fine. Or they might say, oh, well, gosh, yes, I did feel that was a bit X, Y, and Z. And then you've got an opening to say, well, that's not what I meant.
But even if they say, no, you didn't, and you actually did, the fact that you've gone to speak to them,
yes,
resolve a lot of it anyway.
Well, that's right. Really, really good advice.
So why do people hang on to the past?
This is a fascinating one. I think we can't ignore the past, and that's the whole thing. Is that it's not about ignoring the past, but not allowing the past to control your present, and certainly not your future, but allowing your past to inform your present and your future. So I adore my past, and not everything has been hunky-dory. I've made mistakes in my life. I've surely upset people along the way, but it's all been lessons that I've grown through. So I value it, but I don't have it front of mind the whole time. In fact, sometimes I have flashes and I think, oh gosh, I actually did that. There was a time in life when I was a mother with young children and this happened. So I can replay the video and I can remember it. Of course, we have endless photographs to remind ourselves of things, which is good. But they have to inform a better future, or at least as good as if it was very good. So I think it's a matter of practice and decision and being conscious of when something from the past comes up. Is it destroying where you are, or is it informing where you are? And if it's informing, then that's good. And if it's not, and it's destroying, then it's not a good idea. And then you can do I like some of the NLP exercises.
Yeah.
I used to like the one where, you could put your bad issues in a plastic bin liner and you could tie it up and chuck it away. First time I came across that, I thought that really appeals to me because I'm very visual.
Oh, absolutely. I wrote this down. I just want to get your view on it. I wrote, it's easy for people to say things like, buckle up, don't worry about it, just do it, let go, when they haven't had the same experience. I hear this a lot. And especially with coaches, there's like, everybody needs the right trigger for them, whatever that is.
Yes.
It's a problem when people believe they have the trigger regardless. I mean, they think they've got everyone's trigger.
Yes, and I think that's a very interesting point. And I'm not an official coach. I mean, I have coached clients in terms of running individual sessions with them using the gender dynamics map or whatever. But I'm not a certified coach. I haven't been off and done endless years of NLP. So I come to it from a very pragmatic and learned state of awareness, and I put my personal experience into the mix. But I get I actually do get quite frustrated with the coaching approach that you can hear what it is, and it's saying, there's a trigger there and you need to watch it. The stubborn ego in us goes, I don't want to be told. But actually there's also a value in it, because often they're asking you something to make you think. So I kind of see it that the more you become aware, and your awareness is your choice over your life, you can choose to listen to those triggers that somebody else is helping with, or you can create your own. Because, to be honest, if you talk to yourself, when things are not going right. And that, if you don't want to know that you're not going right, that's yourself being stubborn with you. Yes. And as you get more along that awareness path, when that's happening. And I'm sure you do it. I do it to myself. I have the days when I don't want to listen to my good inner voice, and I'm going, no. And then I think, oh, that's a waste of time. Let's get on with life.
I always love when people tell me someone's so stubborn, and I say, do you realize you have to be stubborn to say that?
Yes. Well, I can remember in my study of behavior has come from since 99, when I started my corporate heart business in the UK. It's come from a lot of, I dare say, common sense, but using very extraordinary tools and techniques, and listening and going on programs like you have, absorbing all that stuff and then replaying it back into where I sense the culture of a business needs to be. And that's what I call good behavior. But really, there's plenty that we can learn about ourselves. There's loads of tools and things that we can use. Our choice in the middle of it is really what drives us on. And so all the things we've been talking about lead us to that. So we can be our own best coach. And yes, it is good to have a coach as well, an official coach, the right one that tunes into you, or to have a mentoring board, or literally really good friends who that you can go and say, I'm being a bit stubborn today. Can you help me get out of this? And then I think men and women do some of these things differently. So that's where my study of gender comes in, is that and sometimes I need a male coach, sometimes I need a female coach for different reasons. And that's okay too.
Absolutely. You're passionate about world harmony through connecting men and women to their natural wisdom, so that they can value each other and engage in a new perspective on their dynamic differences.
Yes, I think because I look out on the world of obviously political arguments, and family arguments and social arguments. And I just feel that there's a better way to tackle some of the things that come up for us. So it's not about, everything being absolutely perfect, but we have major issues that need talking about, which can create social cohesion and more happiness for people. And I think getting around the table and talking to each other in a more harmonious way in order to solve difficult problems is a much better use of time. So, life isn't necessarily always going to be perfect. We might become ill or have an accident or be financially constrained or whatever it is, but there's a natural order of service to each other and helping and sharing, which can help. And we got to get away from the greedy, well, I've got mine, so I'm not going to share it with you mentality. But also, I don't see that we need to look after everybody if they're not looking after themselves. And that, what I mean is, it's going back to our original quest is, do you know who you are? And whatever place your life is, can you do the best you can possibly do?
So, performance consultant since 1990 and CEO of Corporate Heart UK since 1999, just lived and worked in Malaysia for 4 years. KL?
Yes.
I've been there twice, actually. I go there quite a bit because I'm often in Singapore. And I've just been to a wedding, and that was like going to another world. What were you doing in Malaysia? 4 years. Well, I'm in a hot, sticky country.
Well, it is a very hot, sticky country. It was a very fortuitous accident, and then you come to the belief that nothing happens by accident. So in simple, short story is, I met my husband in Budapest, which is in Hungary in Europe. and he's American and I'm British. So we met at this conference, which neither of us wanted to go to, in 2011. And we got on and we wrote to each other 45,000 words of gradually increasing in our love for each other. And I went to America. He said, let's get married. I said, yes, at this age, why not? We got married in a little white chapel in Las Vegas with Elvis Presley taking me down the aisle. And it's all on film somewhere. But, and the but was that he had an operation just before we got married because he'd had cancer. And we had planned to live in England, but the operation didn't work. So we had to come back to America, have another operation. And we ran out of visa time, literally. Because just because you fall in love and you get married because you're British and American doesn't mean that either of those countries let you in easily. And we've been so absorbed with the operations. And Jim said to me, well, why don't we go to Malaysia? And I said, it was so funny, I said, okay, where is it? I knew it was somewhere near Bali. And I laughed with my Malaysian audiences when I speak there that, you know, I got to love it. But we went for 2 months to fill the gap, and then we went to England, planning still to stay in England. But we realized that there were more opportunities in Malaysia, just where we were at. So we went back on November the 1st, 2013, not actually knowing how long we would be there, and ended up being there 4 years.
Wow.
And we worked with the Ministry of Women over there. We worked with another entrepreneurial group called My Win. And then I worked for the Razak School of Government. And my notoriety was about working with women and women entrepreneurs, but I also worked with men and women. And then I decided that we needed to come back to America for Jim's health as well. He's a veteran. And we planned to come to California so that I could publish my book, which is The Gender Dynamics of Love, and worked with a consultant here. And the last 7 months we've been here just finding my feet, finding my networks, finding everywhere that I need to be out there, talking to men, talking to women, and really evolving where I am now. And the Malaysian experience is really important in retrospect. And it's interesting because when you're in something, you don't always realize what it is it's doing for you. Because it was an interesting lifestyle and it was very hot and humid. But the working there taught me so much about different culture. You know, they're Muslim, Buddhist, and Hindu all mixed together. They are a moderate nation. They're lovely, lovely people. They've just changed their whole government and got rid of a corrupt prime minister. So people in the world don't know much about Malaysia, but it's quite a stunning place. And it just taught me a lot about different cultures and about women and men. And interesting enough, it persuaded me that, you know, women and men are the same in every culture. There were lots of similarities across culture, although obviously there are differences because of the culture and the religion. But I did some work with the Ministry of Women, which was a mixed group. And I said at the beginning, I said, this is not about your culture or religion. This is about you as men and women. And they went, oh, great, that's good. So it's a human capacity and a need for communication. So now I'm building on my international tour because I actually have a good network in Malaysia as well, which I would never have had if I hadn't fallen in love with Jim and come on this love adventure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
We're almost on. You all right for time?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, so you're setting up Gender Dynamics International in the US and focused on what men of the future think now, about the challenges they face as men today in business and life. Now, I've got questions about that, but just take us over that one.
Well, I was really focused, for so long I have been focused on women because that's been the kind of drawing. And then I thought, well, there feels at the moment like there might be a gap for men about what's going on for men because of a lot of pressure from lots of issues, from confusion over the Me Too movement, sexual harassment in the corporate world, in the entrepreneur world, but also in life. And the growth of the strong millennial woman, and women are now allowed to go out there and be forceful and do everything. And so I thought, no, let's focus on men. And what I found for the last month, I've been interviewing men, and it's really interesting, Lance, because they want to talk about themselves, they want to share, They want to say, this is how it is for us. And we like being a man. We want women to understand us. We'd like women to appreciate us. And my goal is that by highlighting what men feel about themselves now, so what they feel about themselves, as well as the world of men and women, that when they are posted out eventually on a Magical Conversation TV show, that women and other men will watch without prejudice and without condition, just to say, okay, I didn't realize that. Because a lot of the men are saying, well, we want to share our emotions. We want to be okay to cry. But when we cry, don't mother us. So, there are lots of little nuances that I'm learning. And I don't know that anybody else has done this, because there's men working with men's groups, and there's men instructing women on men, and there's women asking men to understand them. And I'm trying to understand men and put that out there so that women can take a different stance. And then my blueprint embraces them all.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm in the group with Henry, Men Helping Men, and I'm flabbergasted sometimes by some of the things they say. And I say, why are you doing this in isolation? Why don't you just talk to women? I mean, years ago, I went to workshops, men, and they brought out the warrior. The warrior's not me. I mean, I define it differently, but I know what they mean by warrior. But in those courses, once or twice, women were brought in to talk to the men. So we had a joint session, and I ask a lot of these people in this group, why can't you just ask women the question instead of making decisions about them and how they are and what they're like? Just ask them. And so, I don't know why they don't. And so when I speak to people, and I've got the question for you too, so that you can crystallize it, and then I make sure that goes in the snippets and I post it in that group, and to show that women also have a problem too. And
oh, yes,
instead of making them the problem, let's understand each other's. I don't understand why they can't ask those questions. Why this rigid?
It's partly because we've got so used to being in a world that's changing so fast that we've forgotten to talk about the ground rules. So the way I look at it and the way I structure is that fundamentally, biologically, we're different. So that, we have different pieces. And even if the brain is only slightly different, there's some differences. So we take that whole. And then we have physicalities which are different. So that's different within both genders. But even biologically, there's some very baseline differences. And if you look at it like a metaphor, men are like bears, very grounded, and women are like birds, we're very flighty. So I use some of these metaphors to get people thinking. So we don't say, but they're all part of nature, so they're all the same. We don't even look out at nature and say, oh, well, all the birds are birds, so they're all the same. No, they're not. Even the bears are not the same. So if you've got a grizzly bear or a brown bear or a panda, or you've got an eagle or a pelican or a little macaw, the way we talk to each other is important. So the core drivers of men, I say that they're more structured, more on-off, linear, then the metaphor is that they're in a box. So the women are more circular because we have a menstrual cycle and we have hormonal things rushing around, and obviously we have a womb and all sorts of things. So it's like the blueprint fundamentals. The man is like a PC and the woman's like a Mac. So we've got operating programs that don't actually always work on both sides. So some of the fundamentals. Now on top of that, we've grown a world where we can all do the same things. So we all have a telephone, a computer, we're all digital, we're all texting. So we've created this world where we all appear to be the same and we can all do the same jobs. And that's changed in my lifetime. Three decades ago, women weren't doing the things that they could do now, and men wouldn't have dreamed of doing some of the jobs that they are doing. So that crossover, and then we've got all the sexual variations, we've got the trans community, we've got equality, we've got sexual health, we've got so many issues up here, but fundamentally we're bears and birds. And that's what I'm getting back to, is that the bears are different types, and you've got a very masculine minded bear and a very feminine minded bear, and they might be like I won't use political characters, but somebody like Pierce Brosnan and Tom Hanks. So
Yeah.
Pierce Brosnan is the MM and Tom Hanks is the softer guy. And the women, you've got different types of women there. I always use Judi Dench and Maggie Smith for my examples there, but not everybody in America knows those. But the Judi Dench is a character she's quite tomboyish, and she plays M in Bond.
Yes.
And there are very few female actresses who could do that. Maggie Smith always plays the very feminine, curvy female, and can play quite a vicious part, but is very female. So these are the extremes. But the goal is that we understand we're bears and birds, and the fundamentals are different. So what you said was that why do men not ask women? And the questions are really fascinating, because women ask questions without needing an answer.
Yes.
And men ask questions needing an answer. So when they hear a woman ask a question, they think it needs an answer. And if she then says, no, I don't want an answer, it confuses him totally. And then he says, I won't ask her again. So the classic, I give this example to you, is the woman might say, oh, do you love me, to a man? And he says, yes, I love you. And she says, do you really love me? And he hears, I don't believe you. What she's saying, please say it again. She's not meaning to affront him at all. She just wants to hear it several times, because a woman's mode of operation is that I want to talk about it. I want to hear it more often. I want to be emotional. I want to find out what's going on. And the man is actually quite straightforward, and he's going, I love you, darling. And that should be enough. And he means it fully. So, I mean, that's just one example, but it occurs across the piece a bit. And I think that's why I'm looking to get men to share in a safe space on screen, even though they know it's going to be going out live, is to be honest about who they are, so that women can really listen. Because I think sometimes women want to hear what they want to hear, and they want to change their man to be the person they want him to be. And a lot of the men I'm talking to are saying, we'd like to just be appreciated for who we are. And we're not like all the bad guys, because there are bad guys and there are bad girls. So, but please be okay with who we are, and don't treat us like a threat.
So
That's something that's come out.
Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus is a great book.
It is.
I love the one where, do you want an ice cream? And the woman's actually saying, I want one.
Yeah.
It's, I've got a quite justifiable reason why I should hate women. I absolutely do.
Why is that?
Well, another time. I always say to people, if you want to turn the tables and ask me questions, you can.
Okay, I'll do that next time.
But, and I will be honest, I don't really understand women. I'm a lot better now, but I still don't really understand. And maybe I've decided that maybe I don't have to.
Well, I think, to be honest, Lance, I think if you love us, you don't need to understand us. And that's something I say to women as well, is that women are beautifully complicated, and that's why we're quite complicated with each other. And you don't want to get in the middle of women having a fight, I can tell you. Neither do I. But men are beautifully uncomplicated. There is a much more direct operating system. But I think what I'm learning is that every man is as emotional as they need to be. And some of them don't express their emotions because they don't know how to do it. But however they do express their emotions, it's not actually the same as the way women express our emotions. And I've learned that. And with my son-in-law, with my husband, with men that I meet, that they are different, and that's okay. That's the bears and birds. But I think we've got so drawn into this idea that we're all equal, and it's equality, and it's gender neutrality, and we're all the same. And I'm going, no, we're not. No. We are beautifully different.
Yes.
And that's the magic of the mix around the table.
I'm aware of time, and some of the things that I wrote down, I'll share with you. I wrote down in flow because you talked about that. And I talked to somebody the other day who's a flow coach, and I thought, well, yeah, it's a nice word. It's a beautiful word, flow. You also said you've got to be ready for anything. So, and I say no, you don't. By the way, you just take it as it comes. If you try and be ready for everything, that means you're prophesying yourself. You're creating something. Why bother? Like you don't know what's going to happen when you wake up in the morning. You just got to go with everything. And the other thing that I wrote down here is, and I would like to hear from you. And when I heard it, I just said, ask questions was the response. And for me, it was designed a blueprint to create conversations between men and women. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the way I've structured the blueprint, and you've got to remember that I'm a masculine-minded woman and I work on a very mathematical, I love geometry, so I had to create a map. You can like it or not, that's fine. But the map is like a new GPS. So we know how to travel on the road. You go from Auckland to Wellington, you set a GPS, okay, in New Zealand, that's quite straightforward. But you know that that's your communication. And if there's an obstacle or a hold up, then you get a detour. So the idea with the blueprint is there's a territory for men and a territory for women and a scale for masculine to feminine. And there are behavioral characteristics across this blueprint. So if I know where I am, I can work out my communication GPS to other people in the room. And therefore it can help me understand the conversation. Now, hopefully when everybody embeds that in their consciousness, they do this automatically. So as more they understand it, it becomes imprinted. But before we had a GPS out there, we would have to scratch our heads and work out all the map. Now we just plug it in and it's on. So my dream is that the blueprint creates the awareness so we have that plugged into our head. So I know as a masculine-minded female that I'm in a room of several masculine males, several feminine males, several feminine females. I know what the range of conversation is going to be, and I might, in a business sense, strategize my conversation. It's a bit like learning the visual, kinesthetic, auditory signals.
Yeah.
It's learning what the signals are. So if it's a whole group of men, they still have different signals for different types of men, and same for women, but when they're mixed together. So the goal is that this imprints itself at a conscious, a really conscious level of awareness, so that I can then let it go and just be. That's my dream.
It's funny when you talk about GPS, because when I run my workshops, people have to total up to, maybe 5 times 9 or something like that. Very simple things. And now everybody, the calculator. I never had those at school. I don't need them, and I can't believe people will do that. And GPS has stolen something from me, because I spent a year in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And what I do when I go to a place is I drive around the whole place and get familiar. And if I go somewhere, I get familiar with it because I had to find my way. Now I've got GPS. Like I spend half my time in Melbourne. I have no idea where I am. I don't know, is the airport there? Is it here? It's all lost, because now we've got GPS, and so I don't know my surroundings anymore.
Well, I agree. And I mean, you get to know a place. I mean, I'm using GPS here at the moment because I don't know LA very well, but I would like to not use it once I get to know the place, because I'm like you. I like the map is in my head. So for my gender blueprint, I want it to be in people's hearts and minds and heads, not actually pressing a button. But it is a mechanism for helping us understand those communications. And once we do them several times, then we get to know it. And there's some, I won't go into that, but there are lots of pieces of evidence now about how you can change the habits, even of a very masculine-minded man who needs instructions. You can change patterns by giving people certain exercises, and it's all habits. So once we get used to the idea that there are bears and birds in the room and they're different types, and we know all the characters, it will become second nature. That's the goal.
Well, one of the things that I do, and I guess people know me for, is putting things over in a way that people can hear them. because I think it's really important. You know, if I use long-winded words, etc., people just won't get it. But if you put it in a way, certainly it's easier to explain when you put it in a simple way, and people get it. So what I'd like you to do is, could you sum up your view of what is going on and what isn't going on between men and women currently, and tell us, just whatever around that.
I think we're not listening to each other, not truly listening to each other from the point of view, not just of our own eyes that way, but in somebody else's steps. You know, we have to be in somebody else's shoes. I mean, it's a classic statement, isn't it? But I think women have got so rightfully carried away in becoming more prominent in the world, more empowered, more out there, having this sort of equal place in the world, that men are not sure really how to handle that. And I think it's really important that we value each other as unique individuals, gender-wise, and in between genders and within genders, with the masculine and feminine, that, you know, all of the masculine and feminine needs to be together in all of us and understood. So listen, don't jump on and say, no, that's wrong. We need the rise of the feminine, that's the only thing that will matter. No, we need to be masculine because that's the only thing that will matter. No, we need both. It's a jigsaw puzzle and it comes together. So we need to really listen and really hear and take time out. Don't rush at it like a bull in a china shop, because we're going to break some pieces. Really step back and say, what do we want our world to be like? You know, if we could seriously have a clean sheet of paper, what would be the rules that would embrace us all?
Fabulous. Lovely answer. A number between 1 and 67. Let's get you a couple of the...
49 I picked, my year of birth.
Is that right? 49, my partner's 49 too.
Great year.
Well, there's a nice one. What do you feel most proud of?
Oh my goodness me. I feel most proud of having the opportunity to do what I'm doing and everything that has led up to this. So, you know, my children, my grandchildren, their ability to let me wander off around the world and do this adventure, and for all my friends and everybody I connect with. But I'm just so proud of the potential that I can have to change the world. And if I can, that will be my legacy, and I'll be really proud of that.
Fantastic. You know, if people ask me these questions, I would be stumped. I'd have to go away and think. What's just one more? Let's go for one more then. Just
23.
23. What's one thing silly or serious that you're guilty of?
Gosh, I don't know. So eating too much chocolate.
Hey, don't tell my partner. I get a box and it's gone.
Yes. And my husband laughs at me because I'm always saying, don't buy me any more chocolate. And he says, you'll want some. I said, no, I don't want any more. I don't want any more. And then I had this craving and I had to send him out to buy me chocolate. Yeah, it's kind of a silly thing, but yeah, it's a secret.
Yeah, no, chocolate's not good for us. Okay, this is your moment to promo. Whatever you want to say.
Okay. What I want to promo is I offer my services to help people either one-to-one. So I'm not officially a coach. So I'm not looking to coach people for a whole year, but really I like to help people where they've got a block on something that is to do with relationships or behavior or situations like that. So my promo is that I want to work with people to help them online over Zoom, but also with groups and working with serious business situations, because that's my background as well. So potentially working with any CEOs or business leaders, male or female, but especially the men who are a bit stumped by what's going on with the whole mixed gender culture, and also the mixed generations, because I work in that field as well. So I'm looking to work with senior corporate leaders, helping them to have an insight into how to manage advocating women to go senior in their business, to help the men who are dealing with working with women and not sure how to deal with it, and dealing with situations over a short period, say 3 months or 6 months. So that would be my goal. If they want to connect with me, I can help them. If they're in Orange County, obviously I shall help them one-to-one, face-to-face. But if they're online, I can Zoom anywhere in the world, which is fantastic. And with the blueprint, I can just give them an insight into what they can do better.
Wow, fantastic. As you say that, you make me think of when I went to the supermarket yesterday, because there was about 7 police cars, and there was a young man in handcuffs sitting on the floor, and there was a whole bunch of school kids. They were actually all school kids who, the school was only over the road, and they should have been really at school, but they were trying to burgle a Chinese vegetable shop. And while I was inside shopping, a policeman came in, and I said, "You got a tough life?" And he said, "Yeah. How do you deal with kids that are so precious?" And I thought, wow, I can imagine, you know, they can't do anything these days. We wrap them up in cotton wool, and they can get away with whatever they can get away with. And and I really felt sorry for that policeman at that moment, because.
Well, yeah, and that's where I do, in my bigger picture, I'd like everybody in the world to use the blueprint, because it helps you. And I worked with some young kids in Malaysia at a college I worked with, and they were all 20s, I think. There was a few of them, and they were a bit resistant to begin with about the blueprint. And but as they sort of looked at it, they said, "Oh yeah, we are different. Gosh, yeah, you're like this and you're like that, and that. Oh, that happened." So people take ownership of it, and this is the whole point: is to get these kids to take ownership of their lives, and not through their smartphones. They've got to take responsibility for their lives in real conversations with real people and real emotions.
That's fantastic. Hey, it's been great. You're an amazing lady, and you're grounded. You're not all in the air or anything like that. You're just straight talking, knowledgeable person.
Thank you, Lance.
Really has been a pleasure. My name is Lance Best. I'm in Auckland, New Zealand, and I'm feeling a bit cold. I don't know, the sun's a bit cold here. This morning let me ask you just one more question. Why Crawford-Omps?
Well, because my husband's name is Omps. So my husband is Jim Omps, yeah. OMPS, and my Pauline Crawford is the name I've been known at in the business world for well over 30 years, probably longer, 40 years. And so I kept the Pauline Crawford. It's on my passport, it's on all my documents, but I wanted to honor being married to Jim because he's my soulmate. So I put the Omps on the end. So that's why it's there.
Fantastic. Well, this morning I've been speaking to Pauline Crawford-Omps in California, ambassador of Magical Conversations, international speaker, behaviorist and gender dynamics expert, and lots more. And the last word goes to Pauline.
Well, thank you, Lance. This has been a really magical conversation. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it. And I look forward to interviewing you.
So, certainly, I have a policy that I'll never say no.
Good for you.
You've now got to have the last word again, because I must learn not to have the last word.
Okay, well, the last word is it's goodbye from sunny California. And I hope that everybody watching this takes on board some points of useful information, and that I will meet you all somewhere on the other side of this Zoom connection. Bye.